don't overthink it, and don't go to the NFL because the man that should be Ohio State's next defensive coordinator is already on staff.
You are Locked On Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Buckeye fans, to your Hump Day edition of Locked On Buckeyes, which is your daily Ohio State podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Jay Stevens, also the host of the Jay Stevens Podcast. And during today's show, we'll project Ohio State's defensive starters in 2025, as well as some key backups for that side of the ball as well. But first, don't overthink it. And don't go to the NFL because the man that should be Ohio State's next defensive coordinator is already on staff, and his name is Matt Guerrieri. And over the next few hours and possibly the next few days, names like Matt Patricia and Joe Colin could be names you hear more often than you want to. They're linked to Ohio State's defensive coordinator vacancy. Ryan Day is going through his process. He's being very, very patient, trying to make sure he finds the right man to lead the Buckeyes defense of 2025. And sometimes when you're trying to make a big-time hire, you think you got to make a splash hire. You think you got to knock it out of the park. Well, a splash hire and knocking something out of the park could also be something very, very simple. Go with Matt Guerrieri. He checks every single box that you would want in a defensive coordinator for the Buckeyes. He's called plays before. He understands the culture of Ohio State. He understands what Ryan Day wants. He understands the players. He's a recruiter. He can develop. We can go on and on about why Matt Guerrieri is the obvious choice to be the Buckeyes' next defensive coordinator. Throw Matt Patricia out of here. Joe Colin and Randy Bates? No. The guy that should lead Ohio State's defense of 2025 is already on staff, and his name is Matt Guerrieri. But every time more names pop up, every time more things get said about, well, Ryan Day is interviewing this person and so is a top candidate, I begin to scratch my head and wonder, why? Why is that person a top candidate? Or why is Ryan Day doing this? Why is Ryan Day going and checking and going this way or going that way? Because some of these moves don't make any sense. And you have been there. You have had to make big decisions in your life, maybe financial decisions or things with your family, or maybe you're trying to move and decide between a couple jobs or a couple houses. You have had to make some big boy decisions. And sometimes you overthink them. It's very easy to overthink them. It's very easy to rush into something, or it's very easy to be swayed to the right or to the left. And if you go with the flow of the wind, you may realize that, man, I made the wrong decision. I'm sitting here trying to realize, why did I do this? And it's because I didn't just make the simple choice. Sometimes the simple choice isn't the right choice. Sometimes you got to do the hard thing to do what is best for you. And I think right now for Ryan Day, it'll be very, very, very simple for Ryan Day to go ahead and promote Matt Guerrieri. Has he earned the right to be the Buckeyes D coordinator? Absolutely. Does he check the boxes Ryan Day wants and you would want in a D coordinator? Absolutely. Is he someone that I think would get a vote of confidence from Caleb Downs or a Caden Curry or Kenyatta Jackson Jr.? Absolutely. I think if you were to poll the players on Ohio State's team, they would probably be more for Matt Guerrieri to get promoted than to bring in a Joe Colin or a Matt Patricia from the NFL. Even though being coached by an NFL coach is great, it's a huge honor. And the ability for these guys to potentially be coached by a former NFL coach, a guy that's won 3 Super Bowls with the Patriots in the upcoming season, that's something that I think a lot of these players would love to have at Ohio State in those meetings, in those position meetings, and in those moments in practice where you realize, oh, his experience is a little bit different than the guys they currently have. Not that some of the guys on Ohio State's coaching staff have not coached in the NFL before, but the last place he was at was in the National Football League. That says a lot about him. But also realize some guys coming from the NFL may have a little bit of an ego. There's coaching egos is one thing we don't talk about a lot on here, but it's real. Ryan Day has one. Jim Knowles has one. Larry Johnson has one. Brian Hartline. Sometimes egos help you make the right decision. Sometimes egos don't allow you to get out of your own way. And I think when it comes to some guys coming from the NFL, they're stuck in their ways. They're not trying to move. It's like a rock in a hard place, and that thing can't get out, man. It's tough to to crack the code. It's tough to teach an old dog new tricks. All those things you can say about someone who doesn't want to change. And there will be guys that are in the NFL that might entertain a spot like an Ohio State to come and be a coach. May it be a quarterback's coach, may it be a running back's coach or a coordinator, whatever the case may be. They may entertain it, but during the interview process, they realize they're going to have to conform to Ryan Day's way of doing things. Not that Ohio State would conform to their way of doing things. And I think that's where there might be a rift and a disconnect between some of the coaches that have these massive egos, and there's no way for anybody to get a hold of them to say, hey, bro, you're wrong. You're not getting it done. That mindset is not going to work here. And if they don't follow that, and if they stick in their own way, then maybe it's a recipe for disaster. And any time there's someone from the NFL that hasn't been in college for a long time, I realize it may work, but it might not work at the same time. The NIL piece and the recruiting piece for the current landscape of college football is one that I think Ryan Day should think 2 times or 3 times or 20 times when thinking about bringing a guy in from the NFL to lead the Buckeyes defense in 2025, because that's real. Recruiting right now, if let's use Matt Patricia, for instance, isn't the same way that it was if Matt Patricia was coaching in college, was most recently coaching in college, which was in 2020. No, which is in 2003. My numbers are way off. My goodness. Recruiting isn't the same way. The athlete isn't the same way. The home life of a lot of these athletes isn't the same way. Their desires, a lot of these athletes' desires isn't the same way that it was back in 2003. While he has been drafting players and while he has been doing a lot of good things in the NFL, when you're in this every single day, it's a whole lot different. Well, you know who's been in this every single day? Matt Guerrieri. I mean, if you look at Matt Guerrieri's resume, I'm going to Wikipedia for this. It's the quickest way to pull this up. At Indiana in 2023, at Ohio State as a senior advisor and senior analyst in 2022, from 2018 to 2021, co-DC and safeties coach at Duke. In 2015 to 2017, safeties coach. Oh, he was a GA at Duke from 2012 to 2014. Oh, he was a GA also before that in 2011, the first year after he played college football at Davidson. He is a guy, well, also an Ohio kid. Let's keep that in mind. He is a guy that's only been in college, that only knows Jim Knowles and Ryan Day and 1 year at Indiana in 2023. He only knows what's been happening in college football. He only knows these changes. He only knows how to adapt to them. He only knows the things that Ryan Day wants. He only knows the current landscape. He don't know nothing else. Nothing at all. Why wouldn't you just make the simple choice? And I'm only getting like this now because it's been a few weeks. I know Ryan Day said he's going to be patient. And I know Ryan Day said that he plans, the hope is to have everything ironed out as far as the assistant coaching staff this week. Great. All that's fine. All that's cool. I know you're probably interviewing Joe Colin, who was in the Super Bowl, so you wanted to wait till after the season was over to bring him in. Cool. Like, all that stuff is great. Maybe there was some contractual stuff between Matt Patricia, and the Eagles to where you had to wait until after the Super Bowl. Cool, great, whatever. Not a big deal. Anyways, none of that's a big deal. What is a little odd, though, is that this thing is still lingering. It's still taking time. And as I'm saying, be patient, be patient, be patient. You could tell I'm getting a little impatient. And I shouldn't be, but only because the guy has been in-house for a long time. You just gave Brian Hartline a promotion. You just gave Keenan Bailey a promotion. Why not promote Matt Guerrieri? It makes so much sense. It could happen today. What could also happen today is discussing some guys that'll be big pieces of the pie for the Buckeyes D for the 2025. One of them wears number 2. The rest of them, well, I'll tell you next. This episode is brought to you by WayFair. After the holiday hustle, there's nothing like giving your home a little TLC. I always find that decluttering and refreshing my space helps me get back into a routine. Whether you're tidying up, clearing out, or just want to give your space a new look to start the year, WayFair has everything you need all within your budget. I'm currently looking for furniture, and their huge selection makes it easy to find pieces that fit my style and budget. My favorite part? The free and hassle-free delivery, even for the larger items. Wayfair site was so easy to navigate, and I found everything I needed in no time. Give your home the refresh it needs with Wayfair. Head to wayfair.com right now. That's WAYFAR.com. Wayfair. Every style, every home. Thank y'all for tapping in Locked on Buckeyes and making this show your first listen of the day. The everydayers might be a little bit tired about the coaching search that we've had going on right here at Locked on Buckeyes, but until Ryan Day makes a decision about who's going to be the DC in Columbus, we're going to continue talking about that bad boy right here on the show, as well as talking about what's to come for Ohio State in 2025. When I think about what's to come, I think about Ohio State's defense losing 8 of their 11 starters from the 2024 season. The 3 guys remaining are going to be big piece of the pie. They're going to raise their draft stock. And, I mean, honestly, there could be a couple of them that are first-round picks in 2026. Not saying they will be, but it's likely. I'm going to go from the front to the back. Caleb Downs is already going to start. So I'm going to start to the back a little bit at free safety, only for that one position. I mean, it's kind of self-explanatory. Caleb Downs is the best safety in the country, best defensive player in the country, and he should win the Jim Thorpe Award in 2025. Wouldn't shock me if he's a consistent All-American. Wouldn't shock me if he's a first-round pick in 2026. I mean, Caleb Downs is just a dude. Didn't have the same amount of tackles as he had during his freshman campaign at Alabama, which isn't a problem because Cody Simon was a man possessed. Cody Simon was a man that was just getting the job done every single week. And he really helped Caleb Downs not have to come down in the box and have to make all those tackles because Cody Simon was doing it. And that's what you want. You want your back, your middle backer, your guy that's a coach on the field to be able to read and react, to have instincts that are so elite that he just picks out what is going to happen before the snap of the ball. And Cody Simon did just that. Starting at free safety for Ohio State is Caleb Downs. Now we're going to go to the front and then work our way back to Caleb Downs once again. On the D-line for Ohio State, many of you may say, Jay, this is easy. I agree with you. The 2 starting defensive ends, Kenyatta Jackson Jr. and Caden Curry. The 2 starting defensive tackles, Caden McDonald and Edric Houston. It's one of those years where you're losing your entire starting defensive line. They're going off to the NFL. But the guys that are replacing them, they've been around for a while. Outside of Edric Houston, the other 3 guys are 3, maybe 4-year guys in the program. I know Caden Curry's a 4-year guy. Not exactly sure Kenyatta Jackson Jr., how long he's been there off the top of my head. But I do realize that this unit, once they figure out the chemistry and once they get consistently playing together, they could be one of the best D-lines in the Big Ten. I won't go in the country yet. I need to see some gameplay before I go that far. But however, I have no issues at all with these 4 guys starting on the D-line for Ohio State. The luxury for Ohio State is, let's just say if they want to go with a 3-down look. Well, Caden Curry could play. He could come off the field. Kenyatta Jackson Jr. could play. He can come off the field. But if you want to put Caden McDonald at the nose, you want to put Edric Houston now at the D-end spot on a 3-3-5 look or 3-4 look, he could do that and do it very well. Let's not forget, Edric Houston came in as a defensive end recruit. And then all of a sudden, throughout the spring and summer, he put on that healthy weight. You know what I'm talking about. When you look at someone and you realize, man, you not just been eating, but you've been eating them weights. You've been doing push-ups for breakfast. That's Edric Houston. I saw him out there on the field, and I'm thinking, young man, you didn't look like that when you got to Ohio State. When the first time he stepped on campus, you weren't that beefy, but Edric Houston is. He's quick. He is powerful. He quickly jumped up the depth chart. And I think Edric Houston and Caden McDonald at that pair are going to be great for Ohio State. It would have been Hero Kanu, but Hero Kanu went to the portal because Hero Kanu quickly realized he wasn't going to be starting in 2025. The moment we saw Edric Houston being the third D tackle, fourth D tackle in rotation, you realize for Hero Kanu, if you want to play next year, not just play, but if you want to start next year, you might have to go somewhere else. And that's what he did. Those are the 4 D-line starters at linebacker. This one's kind of easy. Sonny Styles and Arvell Reese. Arvell Reese was that third linebacker for Ohio State in 2024. Played a lot against certain teams, Iowa, a little bit against Notre Dame. Just really was a personnel piece. If it was needed against certain teams, great. If it wasn't needed against certain teams, great. And he was just a guy that was learning the linebacker position at college, but also picking things up very, very well. Now, one thing I want to see from Arvell Reese over the summer, well, spring and summer, is just put on some healthy weight. Because somebody made a comment about Arvell Reese in the offseason, about last offseason, when he was standing next to Jeremiah Smith. And they said that Jeremiah Smith and Arvell Reese looked the same. And they were amazed at how Jeremiah Smith looked, but then realized they were about the same size. And I don't think a linebacker needs to be the same size as Jeremiah Smith. And every time I look at Arvell Reese out there on the field, I am realizing homie need to put on some of that healthy weight too. Now, not as much healthy weight as Edric Houston, but definitely beefing up. Definitely putting on some of that solid muscle that sticks, but you don't lose your quickness. You don't lose your quick twitch ability and all those good things that go into being an elite linebacker. You don't lose those things. And I think for Arvell Reese, he's going to really over the next few weeks and months really put on that healthy weight, working with Mickey Mariotti to get his body right for the upcoming season where he's going to be playing a lot more big boy football. At corner, we're going to go two corner spots and the nickel corner 2 at either corner. One corner is going to be Davis Igbinosun. The other one's going to be Jermaine Matthews Jr. It's a luxury for that Ohio State was able to keep these guys on the roster. As everybody knows, there are teams around the country that were trying to tap into Ohio State's team and pull them into the portal, even when the portal was closed. Hey, come on, man. Come on, man. Come on, get in there. Let's go ahead and get in that portal. Come on to me. I'll pay you X amount of dollars to come play on this team. And they said no. Cardinal Tate was one of them. Jeremiah Smith was trying to get pulled down south. These guys were trying to get pulled away from Ohio State. And what did they do? They stayed. Now, Jermaine Matthews Jr. could go somewhere else and start. Davis Igbinosun could go somewhere else and start. It's not the ability, not the fact that they could go somewhere else and start and the other school is more appealing. I don't believe it was. You're at Ohio State. The impact that Tim Walton has made on these young men, the impact that Matt Guerrieri has on these young men, and that Ryan Day has on these young men, I think it speaks volumes about these guys that could go elsewhere and make a lot of money, have said, no, I'm going to stick around at Ohio State and have a chance to run it back. We're going to talk more about that later in the week because I think Ohio State has a real opportunity to run it back in 2025 despite losing a lot of the firepower that we saw in 2024. Can't let the cat out of the bag just yet. Come back later in this week. We're going to dive into that one right here on the show. Nickel corner is Lorenzo Styles Jr. It'll be fun to see two Styles boys that are Ohio State legacies out there on the football field together as starters. They played a little bit together this year when Sonny Styles was the starter and Lorenzo was the backup. But next year, I think it's Lorenzo Styles as more of your nickel corner guy. And I'm right. I'm here for it. I am truly here for it. His decision to transfer from Notre Dame a few years ago was huge. And I think his game is going to take a step up, maybe 2 or 3 steps up over the next few weeks and months. And in the season, it's going to be on full display every Saturday afternoon or evening in the fall. We're going to see Lorenzo Styles Jr. be a huge piece of the pie. Now, I'm not expecting him to be like Jordan Hancock. That's too much. There's only one Jordan Hancock, a guy that could play nickel corner or cover safety as well as playing deep safety. There aren't many of those type of guys out there. Jordan Hancock could do it. I don't think it's Lorenzo Styles Jr.'s forte. However, I think when it comes to being that cover safety for Ohio State, Lorenzo Styles Jr. can be that guy. Then last but not least, that strong safety is Jalen McClain. He jumped Malik Hartford last year, and that's one that I was closely watching. How would Hartford be out there or would McClain be out there? It was Jalen McClain, just like Arvell Reese. Not in the same way, though. Not as much, actually. I think Jalen McClain needs to beef up a little bit, especially if you want to do some of the things Lathan Ransom did in stopping the run, which was at next level. It was so elite that the stuff he was doing, a lot of guys aren't able to do. But those are the guys I think are going to be starters for Ohio State's defense of 2025. What about guys that'll be key backups for the Buckeyes next season? We'll dive into those next. Thank y'all for tapping Locked on Buckeyes and making this show your first listen of the day. There have been a lot of people that have been tapping to the show for the very first time this offseason since Ohio State won the 2024 national championship. Make sure you subscribe to Locked on Buckeyes or Apple or Spotify or wherever you get your fine podcast. Also on YouTube as well. Every Thursday, we do a Locked on Big Ten Squad show. There's a bunch of us Big Ten hosts at the Locked on Podcast Network. We rally around a figurative table and kind of talk trash and talk about quarterbacks, talk about Ohio State and talk about Drew Aller and Penn State and all that good stuff. Trust me, you don't want to miss this conversation. A lot of trash talk, a lot of back and forth. There's a lot of people saying things that you will like about Penn State. I can't say what they are yet. Check out the show on Thursday evening to find out what we say on this week's episode of the Locked on Big Ten Squad. Who are some key backups for Ohio State in 2025? One of them is going to be a transfer. Some others are guys that have been a part of the program for a while. One of them is a two-time national champion. I think some of these guys are going to be names you're going to get acquainted with very, very early in the season. Let's go up front once again. Can't go to the back yet. Up front. I'm going to go across the board because I think there are going to be 5 guys that can be key backups for Ohio State's defensive line. Logan George is a transfer at defensive end, and I think there's a path for him to be a guy that can be a backup for either Kenyatta Jackson Jr. or Caden Curry. Doesn't really matter. Either side, he could be a guy that can back up there, and that would be a great adds a lot of depth to Ohio State's D-line in a way that they desperately need. Let's go to the other D-end spot. I think there's a couple guys. One is an incoming freshman, Zion Grady, and another one, C.J. Hicks. I think C.J. Hicks might be more of that jack position this year as long as he puts everything together, because there was a moment last year where C.J. Hicks said, tell them to put me on the bleeping edge, and it was a conversation he had with Austin Ward on the notebook, and they thought they bleeped that part out of the show, but Jeremy Birmingham said he thought he did, but he didn't. I'm not saying anything they did not say on the show. I listened to them talk about that on one of their shows they do throughout the week, and I was like, oh, you thought you bleeped it out, but you didn't. And I've been there, man. I've been there thinking you got everything and you didn't. I've been there. I know what it's like to edit some stuff and realize I missed it. Well, CJ Hicks wants to be on the edge. Great. Be on the edge consistently and show everybody in their mama that you are worthy of being on the edge consistently. I think when it comes to him this upcoming year, I think he's physically fit and ready to play. I think he has a speed to play. I think it's all up here. It's all up in the brain. It's all about just making sure you make the right play and just sharpening those instincts. I think he has the tools. I think it's the brain that has held him back of late. And then also Zion Grady, incoming freshman. I think he's more of a pass rushing DN, the kind that Larry Johnson once at Ohio State has been thirsty for. Caden Curry's a playmaker, man. I mean, when it comes to Kenyatta Jackson Jr., who looks more like a pro right now than I was thinking he would at this point in his career, as far as physically fit. And then Caden Curry, same thing, man. He just continues to get better and better and better and make more plays. I think those 3 guys are going to be guys at defensive end that are key backups. Jason Moore and Tyrone Malone. Tyrone Malone won a national championship at Ohio State this past year. But before that, he won a national championship at Ole Miss in baseball. So this young man has won a natty in 2 sports in his college career. And that is something I think is so rare. I can't think of a guy that's won 2 national championships in 2 separate sports at 2 separate schools other than Tyrone Malone. Former Ole Miss Rebel, transferred to Ohio State the same year that Davis Igmanosin did and had to wait his turn. And I think him realizing that he had to work a little bit more, and I don't think working a little bit more to get on the field is bad. I think it's great, especially when you're behind future pros like Ty Hamilton and Tyleik Williams. And Ty Hamilton, my goodness, man, talking about a guy that's physically fit, that puts on the muscle, does the push-ups for breakfast. Ty Hamilton is that guy. Go out there and look at a picture of him on the football field, and you'll realize the size of his arms lets you know that man doesn't miss a workout. That man doesn't skip reps. That man doesn't try to say, oh, I did that set when I didn't. No, he is a grinder. He is a worker. He is pumping that iron like crazy. And I think Ty Malone got to see that. Not only the transition from Ole Miss to Ohio State, but also realizing they're doing things that are traits of guys that are going to get drafted. They're doing things that are traits of guys that are going to play at the next level. Maybe I should adopt some of those things. I'm not saying he wasn't adopting them previously, but getting an extra year to watch those two guys work, watch those two guys prepare, watch those two guys in the D-line meetings, watching those two guys watch film, being able to just simply be a sponge is going to help Ty Malone be a great backup for Ohio State this year. And also Jason Moore. I think Jason Moore is going to take a massive jump up. And I can't wait to see it. He could be a guy like Edric Houston that if you do play 3 defensive linemen on a particular play, he could be about to be that defensive end. There's so much versatility with this D-line group from the starters to the backups that I think this is exactly what Ryan Day wants. Some other key backups got to move quickly. I did not realize how fast time was flowing. Aaron Scott Jr. and Devin Sanchez. Now, once again, I don't normally think incoming freshmen are going to be key backups. However, Devin Sanchez is that good. Now, we also don't know how the transition from high-level high school football to elite Ohio State football in 2025 is going to go. Everyone may suspect that it'll go fine. But in actuality, no one really knows. And that's not a problem. You won't know until they get on the field. You won't know until the spring showcase, which is April 12th, which is not your typical spring game. I am not. Well, we normally do live shows after those, and so I am up in the air about if I'll be there or not. It may just go live right after the spring showcase and to do a live show at that time, which is probably what we're leaning towards. But it's a spring showcase, not a spring game. And so there's so many things that are different. And maybe the fans will be able to see a little bit of Devin Sanchez in a practice and say, oh, he's got the goods. It's possible. Do I think there will be a scenario where it mirrors Denzel Burke's career? I don't know, man, because that's projected to get injury. And I don't think I'm a guy. I will never be a guy that projects somebody gets hurt. But Denzel Burke capitalized on an opportunity when Sevyn Banks got hurt in 2021. Denzel Burke was a starter, and the rest is history. I would never do that. Also, I don't think he will be the next guy in line because that's Aaron Scott Jr. When it comes to, like, he is going to be more of that Jermaine Matthews Jr. role in 2025. The role Matthews Jr. had in 2024, that's Aaron Scott Jr.'s role in 2025. I think he is that guy that could be a guy that could replace either corner if somebody gets tired or somebody gets hurt or if Aikman Olsen gets too many penalties, because that's a possibility once again. Aaron Scott Jr. is a guy that could back him up. Who are some of the key backups for you on Ohio State's defense? Did I mess up the projected defensive starters for 2025? It's possible. I probably didn't, but let me know. If you disagree with me, that's cool. That's what we're here for. Disagreements are fine. It's a part of sports. Everybody named Mama knows. If you or I were in a bar, watching a game, eating a little bit, getting some drinks, and trying to just chill. And we start talking about Ohio State. Topic of Ryan Day came up. The topic of the game came up. The topic of the national championship against Notre Dame came up. The topic of next year's depth chart came up. I guarantee you, we can pick one of those topics to talk about, and it's possible we're going to disagree. There's nothing wrong with that. If you tap into my mind about Michael Jordan and LeBron James, I guarantee there are a lot of people watching this show or listening to it that I'm going to disagree with. If you talk about LeBron James and Kobe Bryant, if you talk about Kobe Bryant or somebody else, there's a good chance we might disagree. If you talk about Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady or Patrick Mahomes and Peyton Manning, there's a good chance we might disagree. That's what I love about sports. I love that sports bring out these debates and these conversations and the ability for humans to come together that have never met each other before, have a conversation. You can disagree with each other, go on about your day, and come back later and have a good old time once again. I love that about sports. I also love that there's a reality that I love that somebody might disagree with me. It makes me think. Also will help me realize I may have to explain things just a tad bit better, which will make me better, and that makes this show better too. You all can follow me. Excuse me. Thank y'all for tapping in Locked On Buckeyes right here on a Wednesday. For your second listen of the day, make sure you tap in and Locked On Big Ten, because that's the place where my guy Craig Sheeman puts the Big Ten first, where everyone else overlooks it. Find Locked On Big Ten on the YouTube or wherever you get your fine podcasts. You can follow me on any social media platform at jstevens07. Send every email to jstevens317@gmail.com. Thank y'all for tapping Locked On Buckeyes right here on a Wednesday. We'll see you next time.